President Trump is set to wrap up his first year in office on, well, it's kind of a high note. Just a week ago, he signed that historic tax reform. It's one of his many accomplishments in 2017. Take a look.
January 20th, 2017 will be remembered as the day the people became the rulers of this nation again. I've always heard that the most important thing that a president of the United States does is appoint people, hopefully great people like this appointment, to the United States Supreme Court. We will not allow American cities to be threatened with destruction. We will not be intimidated. I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. The biggest tax cuts and reform in the history of our country. This is bigger than actually President Reagan's many years ago. I'm very honored by it.
Here now, Molly Hemingway, senior editor of The Federalist. Rachel Kempf-Stuffy is a conservative commentator. Both are Fox News contributors. And also Wendy Osefo. She's a political commentator and professor at Johns Hopkins University. It's so good to see you all. Okay, so where to begin? I want to begin with tax reform. That was a biggie. Rachel, I gotta say, like after the whole repeal replace thing, it didn't really happen the way they thought it was. I was doubtful. I didn't know whether they'd be able to get tax reform through, but indeed, it happened.
It happened.
Big accomplishment.
It's big, and it's a big accomplishment. I'll tell you, failing on health care might have been what made the tax bill not only go through, but go through, I think, in a better way. I think they really did do what the bill was supposed to do, which was take the best of the House, the best of the Senate, and they even snuck in the Obamacare mandate repeal into that. I think there was a lot of pressure on Republicans. It was sort of do or die because their base, their voters, their donors were stinking mad at that.
Well, I can tell you, we've had more than 70 record highs in the Dow since the president came into office. And so that's a big deal. The market's excited about it. I think a lot of Americans are excited about it. This prospect of economic prosperity is something that I think he takes very seriously, and he is very proud of and wants to be able to point to his accomplishments. As I've often said, he wants to be able to hold up the piece of paper and say, check out that 5% GDP. And now we all know what GDP is, right? Molly, other accomplishments, the fact that he's really had a significant effect on the Supreme Court. How big a deal is that?
Yeah, he was able to do a lot from his perch in the executive branch, not just the nomination of Gorsuch. He managed to nominate someone who is more conservative than Scalia, or as conservative as Scalia, a real stalwart. We have yet to see exactly how this will work on the court, but not just Gorsuch, but all these other judicial nominations at the lower court level that will become the next Supreme Court justices in the years to come. And the regulatory, another thing he did in his position at the executive branch was really pulling back on so much regulatory overreach. It's really a hugely impressive story that has a lot to do with the confidence that people have in the economy. And he had said he wanted to get rid of 2 regulations for every new one passed. It's something more like 20-1 for the first time. There's an actual, in a long time, there's a cut in the number of pages of regulations we have and the number of regulations we have. And this is the type of stuff that very much helps small businessmen and large businessmen and people who are trying to make a go of and have a better life for them and their families. And so that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, no, people want to feel secure. They want to feel economically secure, and they want to feel physically secure. So another accomplishment perhaps you could point to, and Wendy, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, is what he's done to ward off the threat of ISIS. And, we've shown the maps right here on this show where you look at what it was just a year ago when he first came into office, how much territory ISIS controlled. You look at the territory they control today, and it's really just a sliver of what they had. Regardless of what party you're from, is that or is that not an accomplishment?
It is an accomplishment, and as you rightfully said, it is a sliver. But let's talk about some of the things that he promised that he hasn't done. He said he will drain the swamp. He has not done that. He said he will build a wall. He has not done that. And let me just underscore the fact that Obama, his first year, when he was looking at Afghanistan and Iran, he had bipartisan support. And that is the big needle in the side of this president, is that he lacks that bipartisan support. He does not have the support of the Dems. And right now, our country is even more divisive, more intolerant than ever. And that's something that he has to focus on moving into 2018, because when we're looking at infrastructure, when we're looking at the possibility of creating a wall, he will need the Democrats to come along. And if he continues to create division, he can't
Infrastructure. They're going to spend other people's money. They ought to love this one, Rachel. Infrastructure. They've been talking about it forever. I don't know how he couldn't get the Democrats involved in that. And if they didn't want to, well, that might come back to haunt them.
Well, and I'll say one of the advantages that Donald Trump has, or President Trump has now, is that he's not ideological, that he really has just an America first agenda. And so he's not tied to any of the ideology on the left or the right. He's going to do what he thinks is going to make the country more prosperous and safer, because I think those are the two things that he's betting on for re-election.
What does that mean then when it comes to dealing with North Korea? You may have heard me earlier with Ambassador Bolton, and he said, look, Trish, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, you really think they're going to be okay with us having a trade war with China? To which I say, to heck with Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan. And why are we allowing Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan to be the ones controlling what is best for our destiny as Americans? Why should they control what the president's doing? So how do you think President Trump, who says, look, I may have to re-examine this trade situation with China, how's he going to deal with China in trying to get them what he needs to get them to do with North Korea?
I think so.
Maybe over to Molly first, and then Rachel.
Yeah, I think, when you hear Donald Trump's rhetoric, it's reasonable to think that he's going to be some big protectionist or that he doesn't like free trade. And you're hearing these rumblings that he wants to start a trade war. I don't actually think that's true, because so much of the success that he's had has been because of the strong economy and the confidence that people have. And while he certainly might want to renegotiate some trade agreements, and he seems more interested in bilateral trade agreements where you just have one other country that you're working with as opposed to the more expansive ones, I don't see a big trade war in our future.
But I'm talking about trade as it relates to security. I mean, I think security is utmost and important.
Yeah, on that point, there is a lot more that can be done to squeeze China, to get it to take North Korea more seriously. People keep saying, oh, we're running out of options. We're not running out of options. There are so many tougher sanctions that we could impose, and we could definitely use our economic strength to help them see that would be in their best interest.
Thank you, Molly, for saying that. I'm sorry, Wendy, quickly, last word to you, and then I gotta run.
No, I was going to say that, we have to make sure that even though we want to be America first, we cannot isolate ourselves. We cannot work in a vacuum. We need our allies. And in order for us to have our allies, we have to make sure that our president continues to be diplomatic. And that's, again, a sore that he's not doing.
So good to see all you guys. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Coming up next, the woman whose first class